Welcome to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast, where today's top influencers and entrepreneurs on the rise share empowering stories and ninja tips to become the fuel that ignites a positive change in your life. Our guests don't simply coast through life. They don't let difficult situations stop them. They set big goals, keep their eyes on the prize, and they're joining us today to share insider secrets you can use right now to step into your power and live your purpose. Now, here's your host, Christy Ruffino.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast. This is Christy Ruffino, the host of the show, and today I get to interview and having a fun conversation with Jill Jardine. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, Christy. So happy to be here with you on the podcast.
Yes, I am super excited about this interview. I know we've already had so many incredible conversations. This is like a whole world I know nothing about, and I'm just always fascinating by everything I've learned from you and just kind of expanding my thought and my belief system in a completely different way. So this is fun. Hold on, guys. This is going to be a great episode. So before I get into your story, because I love to have everybody share a little bit about their story, I want the audience to know a little bit about Jill's credentials, because she isn't just somebody that woke up one day and says, I want to be an astrologer. She actually has a master's degree in counseling psychology. She's a professional astrologer. She's an intuitive healer and a yogi. She is also the host of the popular podcast, Comic Scene with Jill Jardine, which I'm so looking forward to being on with her. And Jill has been facilitating individual groups in self-actualization, soul connection, and manifesting a better life for over 30 years. So you've been at this a while.
Right. Yes. I just want to, it's Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. Because
did I say it wrong?
Yeah, you said comic scene.
Oh my gosh, no, it's not a comedy
show. That would be probably fun, but it's more about, how to expand consciousness and things like that. Yeah, and I have been doing this a long time. I mean, I started looking at astrology and studying it when I was like 15 years old. And now, mind you, this was in a whole different era. This is in the 70s, when the only people who were studying it were like hippies. And luckily I had some friends whose mothers were into it. And I started to, read these books that back then there was only a few books available, unlike now, but it really started to open my mind. And flash forward years later, I was using it in counseling sessions with clients. That was sort of my goal, to get a master's in counseling psychology, to legitimize using it as a technique in counseling. I mean, among other things such as hypnotherapy and work of Carl Jung, working with mandalas and working toward wholeness. So my studies of astrology, which started as a hobby as like a kid or a young, teenager, actually became integrated into my professional life many years later. So I think the message there for people is that, and I heard this from a friend of mine who was on one of my podcasts, who's a hypnotherapist. She said that like whatever we show interest in around 14 years old, like from about 13 to 16 years old, actually has a connection with what brings us joy and what our soul may gravitate toward naturally, which is fascinating. Because that's actually when I started to get into astrology. So people need to think about, like, what were you really passionate about? Yeah, you were only like a young teenager, but still that's the soul kind of showing you, hey, you may have some purpose here. This may be a life purpose or a calling. So people can sometimes circle back to that.
Oh my gosh, that is so true for me, and something that I've kind of been realizing lately, but you saying that just solidifies it, because and I'm going in the process of moving right now. And so I just dug up all of my stuff from school, high school, when I was really involved with art. I love art. I'm a designer. I love being creative. And I've realized recently in my business that I am really happy when I'm designing websites and when I'm doing all of that creative stuff. And it's not my business, but it's what I do to find joy in my business. One of the pieces I do to find joy. So that really kind of makes sense to me, that creative artistic outlet that I did when I was a teenager is now still what brings me joy.
Yeah, and everybody should think about that, because it's before you were conditioned really by society, as far as like you have to do a career that makes money, or you have to do a career that's practical, or that you want to buy a house, so you want to make enough money to be able to do that. But I think we all need to go back to that time period and look at like what was our joy. And there's an astrological correlate. In astrology, there's also like a major transit that happens around that time, where it's a bit of one of the awakening cycles that we have throughout our life, different ones. But that really hit home for me when I got the confirmation of that outside of, an astrological correlate.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's really good. So let's get into your story. I know you talked a little bit about the fact that as a teenager, you were exposed to this whole different world from a friend's mom, right? Books and
Right.
stuff. And so how does that kind of evolve into you now getting a degree and using this in the way you're using it now?
Right. So a lot of that is in the book, Overcoming Mediocrity, that I tell my story, but the Cliff's Note version is that I also had skills in writing. So I went down a path of like journalism and public relations writing. And it's interesting that I always had the astrology and the psychic gifts as almost like a parlor game in the background. So up until about the time I was in my 30s, it was always just a hobby, and I was pursuing other career paths. I worked for CBS Network Radio in Boston. I had like all these very legitimate jobs, high profile, and worked at Harvard University in the law school and anthropology. And I was always wanting to do the reading of the charts and, working with people. So that's what motivated me to get a master's degree. At the time, people weren't doing this stuff professionally. It was really, I was a real pioneer. I mean, now here we are, in the last 20 years, it's become much more popular, and everybody wants to know, especially the generations of kids born in the 90s. They all want to know about astrology and they all study it. But I was really, it was kind of cutting edge and it was poo-pooed. And I moved to a community in Boston area about 30 years ago, highly Irish Catholic. And, they didn't really like it. And, I've converted them all and they're all my clients, but it's the way I work with people. It's more as a counseling. I mean, it's a therapeutic, and it is just one of the many techniques that I use with people to help them, move through their paces in life. And I would say that I help people shift their consciousness. And so I have many tools in my toolkit, but the astrology was probably the opening to it. And then in my story, people can read, I had 4 near-death experiences starting at 3 years old, drowning in a pool. So I've always been aware that there's more than just what presents here on our physical plane. I've always had a connection with the higher realms of life, or with the soul, or with the spiritual dimensions, and have always had a bit of a pipeline to it. And when I've met gurus from India who became teachers of mine, they kind of confirmed it and said, basically, this isn't your first rodeo. You were a teacher, a high guru in India in a previous life. And the past life thing, I know a lot of people think it's, don't believe in it, but I have facilitated many people in that work, past life regression. And in my experience, it's not even a belief system, it's just I've experienced it, that there is something too that we've incarnated before, and I've had a lot of confirmation in my own life and with working with clients. So that's a whole nother book.
Another whole book, right? Not just an episode, it's another book.
People love reading about, people remembering their past lives too. So it's kind of a deal.
Ooh, that would be a great co-author.
There we go.
Book,
There's
right?
our book, Past Life Memories. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So it, it kind of really in my 30s, I was able to tie in these more esoteric studies into a very practical career of counseling people. I mean, luckily with I've been married twice. My second husband told me I could quit my job at Harvard University to open a counseling practice. And so God bless his soul, he's on the other side, that if it wasn't for him, he was like my angel financially to allow that to happen.
Wow, nice. All right, so here you are now. And so let's go ahead and take a quick break because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to dive into some of these, questions that I want to ask you so you can just share not only with me, but the whole audience that wants to learn so much more about how to shift our consciousness and learn about astrology and how it all works together. So hang tight, Jill, and hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Do you have a story of courage, strength, and perseverance? Are there people out there who could possibly benefit from the wisdom you gain through your journey? If so, we invite you to join our Overcoming Mediocrity team today. Our authors not only enjoy the benefit of having an Amazon best-selling book easily and economically, they also have the satisfaction of leaving a lasting legacy in the world as their story is distributed to audiences across the globe. Visit omapply.org to learn more. And while you're there, be sure to grab our signature Story Made Easy guide to learn how you can write your story to attract more prospects and serve more clients. Once again, that is www.omapply.org.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast. Christy and Jill here today, and we're talking about all things divine and how to shift our consciousness and astrology and all of that fun stuff. And my first question for you, Jill, is as a Christian, how do I reconcile this whole space with my Christian beliefs?
Well, it's actually having to do with alignment with the divine. I mean, I say, therefore, the grace of God go I. If it wasn't for my connection with my soul or divine self, I wouldn't be able to do this work. It's not me doing it. I'm just the conduit for the divine, for God. And that's what, it doesn't matter. Like, so there's religion and there's spirituality. Truth is one, but many are the names. So all the manifestations of religion, there's a higher thread. It's called the golden thread, where it basically has to do with like things like the 10 commandments. And in the Buddhism, it's the noble truths. In the Vedic yogic teaching, it's the yamas and yamas. If you were to bring all the religions of the world together, you're going to see there's basically a thread that's the same thing. And so that's the spirituality. I was raised Christian, and I work with that energy so much because especially when I was doing my hands-on healing, I would step aside and connect with the Christ and the Christ consciousness to come through me in my hands. So that, it's very much in alignment with the teachings of Christ and the healings that he did. So I try not to label what I do with any specific, it's spiritual energy, and it is present in the Christian religion, it's present in the ancient Vedics, it's present in Buddhism. And so, yeah, it's all, truth is one, but many are the names. And it's through this divine light or this divine healing energy that miracles happen. So it would be what we in the Bible witness as miracles.
Yes.
And so again, but guess what? You're not doing it. Your ego has to step aside so that the divine can come through. And people don't realize that. That's what gets in everybody's way. It's like, I'm doing it. I learned a long time ago that I'm not doing it. I'm the vehicle for this healing and transformational energy, whether it comes through looking at somebody's chart, which is more, I use it more as a psychological vehicle to help them understand themselves, whether it's the hands-on healing work I used to do, acupressure, shiatsu, acupuncture without needles. It's basically hands-on healing, but knowing techniques where certain areas in the body are that you can activate. And then just through the spoken word, remember in the Bible, God spoke and then there was light. So that has to do with sound, vibration, and the spoken word. And so all of these techniques are all, they're ways of connecting with the divine. And that's kind of what I do. Some people may be highly Christian or Catholic that come to me. A lot of times they get back into their traditional religion or spirituality, and they see it at the deeper levels. They see it at this golden thread level, and it makes so much more sense to them because they are able to embody and be it instead of feeling like it's something outside of themselves.
Yes, that is so good. And honestly, whatever religion or whatever creator we believe, right? Everybody has their own belief system, and I'm not saying mine's right or anybody's is right, but if we believe in the whole thought of having the creator, that is such an expansive and huge role, or it's beyond our ability to be even able to comprehend that power, right? That energy source. And so who are we to say what's right or wrong? Who are we to be able to put that in a box? So I love being able to just expand our thought process around this, and how you've experienced things that make it real, right? I've experienced things that somebody has healings and different things that have happened. So I don't know if any of that made sense, but it makes sense in my brain.
Right. And in fact, I have a great testimony from a client. She's very Catholic, and she manifested cancer in her body in 4 places. So what I did, I told her, I said, I need you to work with your Christian healer, and I'm going to work and do my work on you. And I believe that with both of us working, and you going to church and you're going to your masses and you're doing your spiritual diligence with this in your tradition, and me doing the healing work from the divine light, that between these two these different interventions, the cancer is going to dissolve. Mind you, it's in 4 different places. And guess what? She did this for 6 months, clear scans.
Whoa, love that.
Use what you align with. She's very belief, the Catholic thing is her life. So it's like, I'm not going to say, don't do that. I'm like, yes, let's work together and make this happen for you, this full on miracle healing. And the other thing is, like, the thing about, people forget that Christianity was the most recent major religion coming to the planet. And it kind of advanced the existing religious because it brings in love and compassion.
Absolutely.
It really is. The Christian dispensation is love. Up to that didn't factor in religion.
Right. Okay. So we've got that hurdle jumped, right? We've got that kind of figured out. Let's get into astrology, because I've always known about it, but I never really understood it. How can everybody born in the same time kind of have these same character? I don't know. So tell me a little bit about the basis of astrology.
Well, okay, I'm going to refer quite a bit to Carl Jung, who was a famous psychologist in the early 20th century. Most people know about him. He's the first one who really integrated astrology into psychology. So in my paradigm, I use it as psychology to help people, quote, know thyself, which was written on the Hermetic temples. And so I've had people who work with traditional therapists get to understand themselves more in one astrology session than they would with like 10 therapy sessions. Okay. But basically, the Cliff Notes version is that there's different archetypal energies or common human experiences that we all have as humans. And what astrology does, it kind of shows you what these archetypal situations are. Like, somebody may identify with the wise teacher archetype. Okay. Somebody may resonate with like the all-pervading mother energy. Somebody may resonate with the warrior archetype. So the planets all represent these, and we can see what are the dominant ones in somebody's psychological makeup. And then the other thing about astrology, it's all about timing, like when certain things will unfold in somebody's life based on when they were born, and when certain archetypes or planets get reactivated or get activated, then they're going to have like some kind of change go on in their life. Like we can track it, like even to things like when people are going to make a move, when they're going to get married, when they may have children. So we like to call the astrological chart when somebody's born, the map of your soul. And the interpreters of that map are astrologers. And to be an astrologer with intuition actually helps too, because it is scientific, but it's also an art. And that's where the art of intuition comes in. And I combine both of them in my work.
Oh, so I'm so excited about this. All right. Because this episode is going to be airing pretty close to my birthday. I'm not sure if it's going to be the exact week, but it's crazy how before you even knew when my birthday is and you invited me to be on your show and we looked on our calendar, it's like around the same time. So that's perfect. So should I say when my birthday is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So June 24th.
Yes.
What does that mean to me? Because to me, it means
you don't
nothing.
have to tell us the year. You don't have to tell us the year. Right away, though, you're born in this, and I work with the Western astrology and also the astrology from India, but let's talk about the one everybody knows in this country, the Western astrology. So right away, I know something about you on a soul level. If I didn't know anything about you, I'm like, you're a nurturer. You care about others. You definitely have a strong emotional, you feel things very deeply. And that part of your soul's, one of the things your souls wanted to do, this is just simply by knowing your birthday, was to be a nurturer, whether that's with you. And I know you have actual children, but yeah, it's almost like you were definitely destined to have children, but you're a nurturer and you care deeply about other people, and that you have a level of sensitivity yourself that allows you to feel your way through life. So you have your intellect, but you also, with you, Christy, and I'm kind of giving you a read just to show people that you operate not only out of your intellect or your knowing, but you also have intuitive knowing, which not a lot of people, you have it and you pay attention to it. So some people may have it and they don't pay attention. So you go back and forth between your intellect and you're just, I know this to be true because I learned this, or this is what, but you also have an intuitive knowing, which will have you do things or act on things just because there's something pushing you that this feels right. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so piggybacking off of that, everything you said is so true, right? But there's also life circumstances that have made me kind of like be a little bit different, right? Because I think sometimes our life creates certain circumstances that will make us, well, let me use an example. So I am a nurturer. I am like a fish. I had this little fish and I couldn't let it die. And so we kept fixing it and healing it and trying caring for it, making it better. And this fish ended up by living 6 years, and I just gave it to a friend. I'm so worried about that fish's care, right? I mean, little things like that. And I have family and kids and grandkids, and I love my creating plants and planting seeds and building dogs barking. So that is really a key piece, as well as caring for others. But then there's also this piece of I've got to be tough and strong and hard because my life has kind of given me things that I've had to go out and be this, masculine energy, hunter gatherer. So there's like a lot of different paradigms to who I am. But you're saying a lot of it is who I am as a core person, but isn't there something to how society or your world around you kind of makes you evolve in a different way?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to say there's 10, at least 10 archetypes in astrology. So it's not like you can't just, figure out somebody from their sun sign, but it's a much more complicated process. But speaking to your question is that so we have these situations, we have our core self, but then, we're all here to develop character and to learn lessons on Earth School here, right? We incarnated, Don't forget, we're all spiritual beings having a material experience, or we are spiritual beings having a human experience. It's not that we're material people learning to be spiritual. Initially, we're spiritual people, always spiritual people, but we're having this material experience. So that being said, we're going to be hardened. We have to learn to we have to become seasoned on some level. We have to work within the world in which we exist. And that world is not always sweet and nice. It can be very challenging. So we have to develop the grit And in your case, it's funny too. The metaphor for you would be you're a Cancerian, you're born during the sign Cancer. Remember, Cancer is got, so it's crab, it's the crab. So you have the shell. So you've been having to learn how to develop the shell to protect you,
Yes.
but yeah, so we have these different things that happen in life that test us, which, there's astrological correlates, but it's for us to grow, for us to grow and learn. It's Earth school. We're learning constantly.
Yeah, I love that Earth school. Yeah. So yeah, hard shell on the outside and kind of gooey on the inside, but people don't necessarily know that about me until they really get to know me, that, because they just kind of see me being this hard, strong person. So that's interesting. All right. So astrology,
Yes.
healer, you mentioned healing experiences and transformation. So what other, like, how else is, I don't know, what other things that do you want to share about this whole thing? I don't know what questions to ask because I don't understand enough about what you do.
Yeah, I can best explain that by giving you an example of, let's say, a client who shows up. So I do work a lot with women who are going through divorce or contemplating divorce. It just sort of has happened organically. So a woman would, let's say, make an appointment. She looks at my website, jilljardineastrology.com, and she comes and I get her birth information. And she's like, I want to get a divorce, but I'm nervous and I'm worried about money. And I have reservations because this has been a long time marriage. And so I would say, okay, have you consulted a lawyer? And she, let's say she says no. So what I do is I'll look at her chart. I'll see if she is in a good cycle for the beginning of a divorce process. And I can see when is a good time to contact a lawyer. Sometimes I'll give her, references. And then we'll do the reading looking at what has happened in her life. Sometimes she'll give me the information of the husband and we'll talk about what's going on with him. And then, in that session or a follow-up, she'll tell me what is like blocking her. Like, let's say she's a little nervous because of the money, then we'll work on prosperity programming, which would be through hypnotherapy or through affirmations and some other tools I have to get her to a place where she understands that, like, okay, don't worry about the money because you're entitled to half of his millions, right? Or whatever. And so, but some people don't know this. They just don't. So it's like therapy. I'm working as a therapist, but I have tools where they are engaged in their own process. I might give her prosperity affirmations, and then she'll come back and she may start feeling the progress. She's making progress. She's taking action in the world. She's feeling more confident. And, we may do a session where we go back to childhood and she sees the dysfunction of her parents' marriage and she realizes she's continued it. And so, we go through, we're addressing her situation from many angles and boosting her confidence and giving her empowerment so that, and sometimes women who want to they realize that, whoa, this is really my issue and I'm projecting it out to my husband. So a lot of times people will go back into the marriage with like a new sense of like, okay, this has been my problem and I've been blaming him. And they try to work through the marriage and try to have a regeneration of the marriage. And I've seen that happen a lot. They go back in and then they come back 2 years later and they're like, I tried, but like, I'm really outgrown this marriage and, he's going down a bad path or whatever. So yeah, it really depends on what the presenting problem is or what the presenting issues for a client. But the thing about the astrology, that can give me an overview. That's almost like an intake as far as where they're in their life right now. And also we can look at their past and we can see patterns. So that's how it actually works in a practical way.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. And so for me, because I'm going through this major life change where I'm moving and going from the state I've lived my whole life to a completely different state, leaving my family and building a new life, I think that would be a great thing for me to work with you on.
Right, because obviously, well, people don't realize this. Something has happened for you internally, Christy, leading up to this. And then sometimes it's the taking the action is the last step. Okay. So it's like you've been doing the internal work leading up to it. And then this is the way that your life stream wants you to then progress and evolve. It's like, okay, I'm ready for this. This is my next step. It's scary because it's breaking all the old patterns and it's out of my comfort zone, but I am being guided to it. So I have to honor that.
That is so true. That is so true. So, all right. Well, this has been amazing. I do want to also point out to the audience that Jill has jumped into the crypto space. Yeah. And I know I've listened to quite a few of her episodes on that, and they've been completely enlightening for me because I love that whole place. It's new to me. I've been dabbling, but I'm just kind of like guiding. I feel like I'm a little bit more comfort in my decisions listening to Jill. She's been really great with that. So make sure you check out her podcast. It's not Comic Scene with Jill Jardine. It's Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine.
And comical sometimes.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good. And you have you have a gift that you want to share. And it is about, well, I'll let you talk about what that is.
Yeah. So this was offered through the book. It's called Healing with Sound to Create Abundance. So everything in the world is vibration, okay? And sound vibration is very powerful for healing. I've worked with crystal bowls and drumming, and I'm working with the gong now, which is part of the Kundalini yoga, a yoga tradition. And basically it's a sound healing. It really helps you clear patterns or blockages in your consciousness that may limit you. And so you can go onto my website, jilljardineastrology.com, online courses, Healing with Sound to Create Abundance. And it's basically a meditation. So you would get really comfortable, lie down, and just allow the vibration of this healing gong that I've been trained to play it. It's not like random sound. It's actually very coherent for you to go to a place within your subconscious to relax, release, and feel good. It's a feel good at the very least.
Nice. And the link for that, don't worry if you didn't write it down. The link will be in the show notes. All you have to do is click it. It's all good. But yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jill. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, Christy, for everything you do and the great job you did with Overcoming Mediocrity, Limitless Woman. It's been a pleasure and honor to be part of that.
Yeah, Amazon best-selling book. If you didn't get your copy, make sure you connect with Jill. I know she would love to send you an autographed copy of one of her very own books. And definitely go to her website and download this sound resource that you'll be able to use as you try to get connected and calm and just use the power of that sound healing.
Right. And I have other free resources on my website, such as like a life purpose report. You put in your birthday and you kind of find out what your life purpose might be. Back to earlier in the episode, some things that might be a natural calling for people.
Love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jill. If you learned anything from this episode and just found this to be super exciting, share whatever you did learn or whatever resources you download. Share them with your friends. Let them all benefit from this conversation as well. And of course, if you like our show, please go to whatever platform you listen and show us some love. And if you can take a little extra moment to leave us a review, that would be great as well. So thanks, everybody. And thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Christy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast, where we believe that everyone can have the business and life of their dreams once they've learned the art of mastering their story. Mastering our stories is the key to everything we want in life. Our stories can either hold us back or they can propel us to new heights. We can choose. You can choose. Choose to overcome mediocrity with us. Let's achieve greatness together. To learn more, visit www.overcomingmediocrity.org. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.